And it's for medical crowdfunding to help people raise money for the medical uh, fundraisers. So if you have cancer and you can't pay all your bills or you're out of pockets, friends and family would support you and and
Oh, that's
and
really
and
interesting.
help you up. And no one would fund it. And so like I look back,
Huh.
I think like we got really lucky to get into a Techstars program. We just got randomly picked, and that changed the trajectory of our career.
All right, this is another episode of the Form Your Own Pack podcast. My guest today is Ethan Austin from Outside VC. Ethan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's amazing. Thanks for joining me. So, for people that don't know, who is Ethan?
Who am I? So I'm a venture capitalist. Have a fund called Outside VC. We invest in early stage companies, usually pre-seed, sometimes pre-product. Um, Oftentimes, just at the idea stage before anyone else will invest. And we work in fintech and Web3, working to help create a more equitable financial ecosystem.
Very interesting. So, what was the motivation for you behind Outside?
Ooh, that's a hard question. The motivation, I think, was how far back do we want to go? So I was a founder for a long time. So I started a company in 2008 called Give Forward, and we were one of the very early crowdfunding companies. And when we launched, it was us and Indiegogo, and then Kickstarter. They were working on stuff. They launched next year. They'd been working on stuff around the same time. And GoFundMe launched the next year, and then within 5 years, there was 1,000 different platforms. And in the first 2 years, it wasn't even called crowdfunding. We called it peer-to-peer fundraising, and no one would fund us. And it was early, and B, we were in Chicago. It was 2008. The VC ecosystem wasn't the same it was today, but like we ended up saving over 10,000 lives on the platform. Millions of people used it. $200 million got processed on the platform. A decade later, Facebook builds the exact same thing, right? So like, and it's for medical crowdfunding to help people raise money for the medical uh, fundraisers. So if you have cancer and you can't pay all your bills or you're out of pockets, friends and family would support you and and
Oh, that's
and
really
and
interesting.
help you up. And no one would fund it. And so like I look back,
Huh.
I think like we got really lucky to get into a Techstars program. We just got randomly picked, and that changed the trajectory of our career and the company, and it put us into business. And I just think back to those 2 years we had to bootstrap. Like I want to be the the VC who will take bets on people early that are non-obvious founders, non-obvious ideas, and put people into business. Because I think, had we not done this, of course, someone else was going to come along and do it, and other people did come along and do it, after us. But like, how many lives did we save, or how many lives were lost in those 2 years when we were bootstrapping and couldn't really scale? And so I don't want businesses not to come to fruition because people won't fund them.
I love it. Okay, so what sort of companies are you typically looking at? Like I know you mentioned non-obvious, but what is it that you are typically looking for either in a venture or a founder?
Yeah, I think at my stage, I'm really looking at founders the more than I am ventures. So I'll look within fintech, and I look, I'm specifically looking in financial inclusion. So I think the financial system has worked really well for this band of people right here, like really, really well for hundreds of years. If you're in this band of people, like the financial system works for you. If you're not, if you're in this band of people, it doesn't work for you. And I'll give you like just an example. If you're a W-2 worker, it's very easy to get a loan. Can you get a mortgage? You can get credit. If you're a 1099 worker, the system doesn't underwrite for 1099 workers. You can't. It's very hard to get a mortgage. It's very hard to get a student loan. It's very hard to get personal loan, just because of the designation of how you're working. Yet like half the country in the next 5 years are going to be 1099 workers, and so like we should build a financial system that actually underwrites and serves all people better, right? How do we help people get ahead and not stuck behind because they're stuck off with like worse financial tools than just for no reason besides the fact that they're 1099 versus W2. So that's kind of, just from a company standpoint, that's kind of what I'm looking for. Like, how do we create tools that are going to like make people's lives better and help them get ahead. But I really look at founders, right? I'm betting on people before there's any data whatsoever, right? That oftentimes there's no product even, and so like, what do you have to go on? Um, I tend to look for a couple of things. I look for something that is extraordinary about the person. And it doesn't have to be anything that they've done before. It's like, no, it doesn't mean like I went to Stanford or Harvard or I worked at Google. It means something like, sometimes someone's an immigrant. They came here with nothing and they built something. Or someone played professional sports at a professional level because it means like they took years of their life to dedicate themselves to something and they can do that again in another facet. Or I've invested in someone when he told me that he worked at PayPal and was leading an R&D lab there, and he quit to drive 36,000 miles as an Uber driver because he wanted to better understand his customer that he was going to serve. And I was like, that is insanity.
Yeah, that's
Like,
commitment.
you're not a normal person. And like, I think startups are so hard that like, you can't bet on normal people because normal people just, it's like,
That's true.
it's just really like, you look at most people who are building big companies, like, I don't think anyone would say that Elon Musk is a normal person, right? Like, anyone
I
building.
think it's better for that, right? So that's a great thesis. That makes sense. Like, look for
Totally.
normal people. I like that idea.
Yeah, just something about them is like abnormal. And then I look for EQ, because I think if you're going to build anything big, if you're going to lead people, you need to have great EQ. I look for team dynamics and how do the teams work together and like how do they treat each other, because I think beyond product market fit, beyond go to market, like the thing that really matters to like build something big is just like the quality of your leadership. So I think that matters a lot.
So what's one company or maybe one particular sector that you're pretty excited about?
Um, I can give you a company that I'm excited about right now. It's, the company where that guy quit
Oh,
PayPal to drive 36,000 miles. A company called Line. I don't know if I can say it on the air how much revenue they're doing, but like they went from like zero ARR at the beginning of last year to uh, it's not public, so I can't say it, but an incredible amount of ARR within a year, like faster than I've seen most companies grow. And what they're doing is they're giving people small dollar loans, um, but they're doing it on a subscription basis. So you pay like $199 a month or $499 a month, and you can get a loan. You don't have to have a credit check. They're giving loans to people who might not otherwise be able to get capital. And so like maybe it's an Uber driver who, hey, I need $20 right now to put money in the tank so I can keep driving. And I don't have $20, and like I can get a loan instantly and like get money so I can keep driving. And I call it working capital for the working class. And I think it just helps people who are on the margins, um, just stay on the right side of that margin, right? And not slip into, you know, like, really challenging, you can't drive that night, you don't make rent, whatever might happen, downward spirals. And I think it's providing capital to people sometimes who wouldn't otherwise be able to have capital outside of really predatory, systems.
that's really interesting. All right, if you could offer founders only one piece of advice, what would that advice be?
One piece of advice is hard. I would say this is like, no one does anything in life without help and without help from others. Everyone's smart. Everyone's working hard. Like those are kind of table stakes, but you really need help from someone else. And no one who's been successful has gotten there without help from someone else. And so like, I would think about how to create your network, how to create your path. Who are your people who are going to lift you up? And because it just doesn't happen otherwise. Everything that's been good has happened in my life that has helped me advance my career has been because someone has gone to bat for me. And so how do you build those relationships, like long-term relationships with long-term people, and so that they, when you need them, are willing to go to bat for you, because it just doesn't happen otherwise. I think that there's the inside track and the outside track, and it's a lot easier to move a lot faster when you're on the inside track and you have people kind of helping you make that happen.
I love it. And as you kind of pointed out, that's one of the themes that we try to talk about, the role of partnerships or community to helping either individuals or companies achieve success. So that's a great piece of advice. What is one piece of advice you can give founders maybe around product? Because you see a lot of people starting with no product and then they build something. What would you say that people should think about before they build their product?
I think you should really understand the problem that you're trying to solve. I see a lot of folks going out there and building cool technology and not really understanding the problem you're going to solve, um, and trying to figure that out and kind of going about it the wrong way. I think the best founders um, tend to have, are oftentimes accidental entrepreneurs where they didn't mean to start a company, but they had a problem that they were seeing in their own lives, that was just kept punching them in the face enough times so they finally said, all right, I guess I'm going to punch back, and I'm going to have to start this company, not because that's what I want to do, but I just need, no one else is solving this out there. And so I think like having a really deep understanding of the problems and of your customers. You go back to that founder Akshay with Line, who drove 36,000 miles to understand his customers. Like, understand, what are the problems that exist, and who it is you're serving, and like what their needs are. And I think if you can solve an actual problem for people, everything else, becomes easier. It's all still hard, but it becomes easier when you can really solve something for people.
I love it. That is terrific advice. All right, I want to be respectful of your time. How do people get in touch with you?
I am Ethan Austin on LinkedIn, Ethan Austin on Twitter, and my email is Ethan at outside these. Actually, it's at outsideventurecapital.com. I don't even know my own email address.
That's all right. We'll put all that in the show notes. So if we're in the
Yeah.
show notes, we can figure it out later. We can always change it. So thank you so much for spending time with me. I'm going to wrap with one final thing, which is when we have interesting people on the podcast, we like you to nominate other interesting people. We typically talk to either investors or founders of scalable ventures. So who would you, Ethan, like to nominate as a featured guest to the Form Your Own Pack podcast?
I'd like to nominate Chris Echevarria, who is the founder of Blackstock, and Weber. And I think he'd be an interesting and fun guest.
And I'm sorry, what was his name again?
Chris Echevarria.
Oh, that's what I said. Okay. Chris, you've been nominated as a future guest of the Form Your Own Pack podcast. We will accept that and we will follow up. Ethan, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and we look forward to staying in touch and following your journey.
Cool. Take care. Thanks so much.